Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. My name is Leon Jones, and tonight, getting right back into the scam series. I love this series. I got plenty more scams to give you. Thank you, my sweet chocolate TJ, for sending me this one. Always does a good job for me. And I got enough scams to go right through the summer. And this one is a big one. And I'm going to talk about fake check scams. Yes, many of us believe that checks aren't on the radar anymore. That is false. You have a lot of them. Now, before I get into any video, let me share my screen. Let's uh let's check out an article. Now, we deal with fake check scams. Again, fake checks, again, they continue to be one of the most common instruments used to commit fraud against consumers. So I'm just going to say this. Before you deposit any check you weren't expecting or wire funds to any unknown recipient, this is what you need to know. First of all, when we deal with fake check scams, well, how do they work? Well, there are many variations of the scam. Now, it usually starts with offering something to someone, or you buy something you advertise for sale, pay you to work at home. That's a big one. Pay you to work at home. Another big one. Remember, I did one on sweepstakes earlier? Well, here's another fake check scam. Give you an advance on a sweepstakes or you've won. Give you the first installment on millions you'll receive for agreeing to transfer money into a foreign country to your bank account for safekeeping. Now, here's what happens. Basically, fraudsters issue you a check or money order worth more than the amount that's owed to you, and they instruct you to wire the excess funds back to them before receiving your lump sum payment, which you never receive your lump sum payment. So once you send the money, you find out that the check or money order is bogus. Now, after I just gave you all that information, I'm going to tell you how to prevent from being scammed with a check. So, this is what you need to know. Even if the check is cleared, you may not be in a clear because under federal law, banks must deposit funds available quickly. Banks must deposit funds and the funds must be available quickly. But just because you can withdraw the money doesn't mean that the check is good, even if it is a cashier's check or money order. So, if you have any questions about whether or not a check is good, you better talk to your banker. Be sure to explain the source of the check, the reasons why the check was sent to you, or whether you're being asked to wire money back. And one thing about checks you have to understand is appearance. And don't be fooled by the appearance of these checks. Why? Because scam artists are using sophisticated technology to create counterfeit checks that basically mirror the image or appearance of legitimate checks. Some are counterfeit money orders, some are phony cashier's checks, and others look like they are legitimate business accounts. Now, the companies whose names appear may be real, but someone has dummied up the checks without their knowledge. Also, never pay to play. There is no legitimate reason for someone who is giving you money to ask you to wire back money or send you more than the exact amount. That's a red flag. And if you know that's happening, it's a scam. So if a stranger wants you to pay for something, insist on a cashier's check for the exact amount, preferably from a local bank or one with a local branch. Now, something else you need to do. Do not respond to online solicitations for easy money. Social media scams like card cracking may offer quick ways to earn extra cash. But keep in mind that easy money is rarely legal money. Again, easy money is rarely legal money. Also, verify the requester before you wire or issue a check, because it's important to know who you are sending money to before you send it. So just because someone contacted you does not mean that they are a trusted source. And with fraud, here's what you have to do. Report any suspected fraud to your bank immediately. Why? Because bank staff are experts in spotting fraudulent checks. So if you think someone is trying to pull a fake check scam, don't deposit the check, report it. Contact your bank and report it to the FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission. And also check out the Better Business Bureau's scam tracker. Now, again, what I'm here to do is I'm not a lawyer or anything, but I'm basically giving you the information that I researched to prevent you from getting scammed. Because some of us are getting scammed and we don't know if we're getting scammed. I mean, you have all kinds of checks that come in the mail. I get them in the mail about loans. I don't trust those checks saying we are approved for a loan. Well, how do you know you're approved? But one thing I will tell you, the reason why these scams are happening is too many of us, we're going through Google. DuckDuckGo is I've been checking out that browser. It's a pretty good browser. It's more private than Google. See, what Google does when you go in Google, they want to just document every website you go into so they can sell your information. This is why you get all those pop-up ads. And those pop-up ads, they basically pile up, and you're going to get emails. And see, with some of these checks, you're going to get emails, you're going to get text messages, and you're going to get a lot of these scam calls. Now, what I'm going to do, and I'll make sure I do it right this time, and I apologize, the last video I made, let me turn it up, and let me get the sound. Now the sound is up, and I want you to hear a video on how scammers are being caught behind these fake checks. So without any further ado, fair use. This is for educational purposes only. Fair.
Imaginary.
646, the Let Joe Know team is diving deeper this morning into a scam that we've talked about more than once, fake checks. Investigator Joe Ducey speaking with law enforcement about the challenges they face when they're trying to stop these scammers.
Remember the movie Catch Me If You Can?
Ma'am, I'm sorry to have to tell you, your son is forging checks.
I have a payroll check here I'd like to cash.
I'm working part-time at the church now. Just tell me how much yours and I'll pay you back.
$1.3 million.
It's a check scam that was big then, even bigger today, with scammers now using unsuspecting victims to cash the checks for them. And law enforcement is racing to keep up.
You're going to get caught, but it may take some time.
In most cases now, scammers send fake checks and find a reason for the receiver to give part of it back. The scammer wants it by Zelle, Venmo, or Cash App, knowing they'll get the cash before the receiver finds the check is bad. It happened to Ben.
I wouldn't have authorized that transaction if I had known the check was a counterfeit. I didn't know.
He's out $1,300, just a fraction of the $500 million the Federal Trade Commission says was lost this way last year.
We need to be notified, no more than 72 hours, ideally within 24 hours of an incident like this, to try to backtrace it.
Special Agent Frank Boudreau Jr. with the Secret Service says there's just a small window of time to keep your money from getting to the scammer. If it can't be stopped, the bank will take the money from you.
they're going to debit your account.
Another big challenge, cutting the time it takes to know if a check is fake. There's no universal way to do it. Different banks have different safety features. Boudreau says things like repeat check numbers or a check being paid to someone not on payroll are the most common red flags, but only once an audit is done.
If they keep the number low enough that it'll probably cash in someone's account. You know, they're not going to probably try to send someone a $250,000 check because most people probably don't have $250,000 in their checking account.
He adds mobile deposits also make it harder to vet checks because banks are only able to look at the account and routing numbers to determine legitimacy. And those numbers are often stolen from a legit account. Any overpayment for something you're selling or getting a large check for work you haven't done yet, it's a scam, and they're always going to want money sent back to them. Go to abc15.com/letjoeknow for more ways to spot most scams. I'm investigator Joe Ducey. If you got a problem, let me know.
Fair use, I am going to present another video. Turn it up, make sure my sound is up. Fair use, this is for educational purposes only. And you need to be aware, these scams are taking place. And not only are they taking place with checks, but with money orders as well. Now, money order used to be something very clean because money orders don't bounce. But you have scammers finding ways to create fraudulent money orders that look legitimate. Fair use. Getting back to the videos on check.
Is it possible to help keep our online platforms safe from cyber threats?
So we can better protect our customer data?
With global secure networking from Comcast Business, it's not just possible, it's happening.
One of the oldest crimes in finance being supercharged by some of these popular messaging platforms like Telegram. The platform has become a one-stop shop for criminals, from buying stolen checks to hiring people known as walkers to deposit them. Our Eamon Javers has some details.
It's a big problem that's getting worse.
Paul Benda is the Senior Vice President of Cybersecurity and Risk at the American Bankers Association, and he says that paper checks are one of the financial system's weakest points.
Would you say that every single bank is experiencing this right now? I think that would be a legitimate statement.
In 2021, banks reported nearly 250,000 cases of check fraud nationwide. But by 2022, that number skyrocketed to nearly 460,000 cases. That's an 84% increase in just 1 year.
It's concerning. It really is.
In many cases, checks are stolen out of blue postal boxes like this one. Then crooks will change the recipient's name and the dollar value of the check using forgery techniques. Next, they'll open an account at a bank in a phony name and hire someone to deposit the check. That's what happened here. This surveillance video from a Florida bank shows an elderly homeless man depositing a fraudulent check. A police report says it was cashed for nearly $3,000.
Driving this checking crime spree is a network of organized gangs. They're using technologies like Telegram to coordinate thefts, connecting people who stolen checks out of the mail with other people who will walk into banks and deposit them. Those people are known as walkers.
Let's talk about the term walker. What does that mean?
So a walker, is exactly what it says. Someone who walks into a bank that cashes a check. They're kind of your mule to execute the criminal fraud.
On Telegram, users can message in private and public group chats. The platform is popular among criminals because they can use an anonymous username and they can encrypt their messages, meaning the police can't trace them. We found group chats with lots of posts from criminals advertising their network of walkers to help other crooks who want to cash out their stolen checks.
This particular individual is being advertised as a walker.
Maria Noriega is a cyber intelligence analyst at the firm Q6, which is a consultant to CNBC.
You can see by the caption here, a good walker that's ready, all spammers tap in, meaning everybody who wants to get with this walker to contact the threat actor that has posted this.
So this is a criminal advertising, hey, I've got this guy.
Yes.
He's a walker. He's ready to go into the bank and deposit a bogus check.
Yeah.
Call me if you want to use him.
Basically, yes.
CNBC reviewed dozens of advertisements and requests for walkers on Telegram. Some crooks asked for specific genders. Others wanted someone elderly. And this criminal boasted about buying a new hat for their walker.
When I said grooming, this isn't just that they're brushing their hair. You know, a lot goes into trying to make these guys look as legitimate as possible. You can see here, this guy, I think, is getting his hair bleached.
This looks like this is a dye job here, right?
Yeah, it looks it.
The big banks say all of this is causing enormous headaches for the industry.
We can't do it alone. We really need the Postal Service to get better at protecting the mail. We really want law enforcement to step up their game and prosecute more of these cases.
Now, the walkers we see advertised on Telegram are often the elderly and the homeless, and it seems clear they're getting the smallest cut of this crime, which can produce some big money. We saw crooks posting receipts for more than $20,000 in some cases. Now, Telegram says it proactively moderates public channels and bans any that violate its terms of service. We also see claims by the crooks that they're getting help from what they call innies, or insiders at the banks and the Postal Service, who are helping those gangs get away with it. To stop this fraud, the U.S. Postal Service says it's been actively educating the public about how to prevent check theft. Back over to you, Carl.
Who left you all alone down here? I'm playing a new game with Chauncey. He says you're not alone.
Writing checks isn't nearly as common as it was decades ago. We know that, but check fraud, we can tell you, is on the rise.
Yeah, on your side's Christine Lazar talked with a consumer advocate who says you're not as protected by your bank as you may think. I know this for a fact because I had $6,000 taken out, and they helped me that time, but said if it happens again, it's on you.
Now, was that check fraud, or was that?
Yes, it was a check fraud.
Do you guys still write checks for anything?
I don't. I just quit. I mean, rent they just turned it over to electronic.
I mean, there's some things that it is actually really hard to not write a check for, right? But what I learned is checks still have some protections. You just need to know what those protections are so you can advocate for yourself. Well, the Financial Crime Enforcement Network reports that from 2020 to 2021, check fraud increased 23%. And it's estimated that check fraud will cost consumers $24 billion this year.
In late 2021, Steve Cedrone dropped 3 checks in 3 separate envelopes into a USPS mailbox. All 3 checks were stolen.
At the time, I was a little more, wary of, for example, doing a wire transfer and giving out my routing number and my account number.
One of the checks was made out to the U.S. Treasury Department. Cedrone was making a tax payment of more than $21,000.
And the front had not been altered. It simply had somebody's signature on the back, which was, of course, was illegible.
Cedrone reported the check fraud to his bank, Chase, and to the bank where it was cashed, Wells Fargo. 2 years later, neither bank has returned the money. Wells Fargo sent him this letter last week, telling him we are not able to release information without the customer's permission. That customer being the person who allegedly stole and cashed Cedrone's check. And Chase said in this recent letter that the bank of first deposit, Wells Fargo, is responsible for reimbursing the payment.
I would say that I've gotten next to nothing in terms of information from either one of these banks.
Carla Sanchez-Adams is a senior attorney with the National Consumer Law Center. She says federal law generally requires the victim's bank, in this case Chase, to reimburse them for fraud.
That check isn't properly payable. They're not supposed to pay on it. And if they do, they need to recredit my account as the consumer, as the bank customer. So that bank, my bank, can then pursue other banks, can pursue the wrongdoer. They can do whatever they want on the other end, but on my end, they have to recredit my account.
Now, I contacted both Wells Fargo and Chase, and almost immediately, Wells Fargo issued a check to Chase for more than $21,000. And Chase says it will now credit Cedrone's account nearly 2 years later. He will finally have his money back.
Christine, you called and got them to do that, but he took
Funny
him.
how that works.
I know.
But I will say Chase maintains that it was on Wells Fargo, not them, to return the money. But the legal expert I talked to and everything I read online really says that it should have been Chase that immediately credited him and then went after Wells Fargo, and they could kind of figure it out on their own, and the customer would be whole. Now, I do want to point out that I also talked to the expert. Okay, so should we stop writing checks? And she said, no, you actually have quite a bit of protection with checks. With wire transfer, it can be trickier because if you put in like one wrong digit It'll go to the wrong person and the bank will say, hey,
Sorry,
we
you
delivered
did-
it
yeah.
as you asked us to. It's not our fault that you put it in wrong. But she says if you're delivering a check, especially if it's a large one, try to cut down on how many people are going to touch it. So instead of putting it in the post office box like he did, walk into the post office. Or if it's, say, it's like Time Warner Cable or something that has local offices,
Go to the
walk into the
office,
office, especially if it's a big check. If it's like $50, hey, you can take that gamble. But if it's 21,000,
Yeah.
you know, better to have it going right to the person you want it to go to.
Good information, as always. Christine, thank you.
Well, basically, that was good information. I don't care what the amount of the check, what the amount of what the check is. Again, I don't care what the amount of the check is. You want to keep that check out of a number of people's hands. Now, the individuals on the news said exactly what I would have done. Generally, if I have any type of check and I'm going to mail it off, I'm going right to the post office. I'm not going to put it in those blue post office boxes because then you have to wait for somebody to come and collect it. And usually collection ends by 5 that day. No, I take it right into the post office. Now, there was also something mentioned as well, a digit. If you are doing a wire transfer, you must watch the digits because that is true. If you put one digit wrong or the name is wrong, oh, the monies are going to be delivered, but it could be delivered to the wrong person. Now, it's funny that it's mentioned because I'm going to get on this. YouTubers, a number of you are asking for cash apps. Now, I know it happened to me one time. I sent $5 to a Ronald somebody. Not going to say his name. He was a YouTuber. He is a YouTuber now. But that YouTuber had somebody else had the same name as the YouTuber. And I sent $5 to him, but it was to the wrong Ronald. Called Cash App. It's tough to get that money back. Wire transfers are very, very tricky. You have to be more observant with wire transfers. And that's why now I'm not knocking the Cash App or the Venmo or the PayPal apps, but I'm just going to say this. Those accounts, they're like electronic checks or electronic transfers. It's much easier for cyber criminals to get into those accounts because they can see what you're typing. They can pick up passwords. They can pick up usernames. They can get your information very easily. Why? Because they can see who you're transferring monies to. Again, it's not the same as writing a paper check. Yes, a paper check, you do have protections. And here's what you can do with a paper check. If you're writing, you believe there's fraud, you can stop payment on that check. But you have to get your bank involved. Now, what I used to do with checks, and I don't see too many of them anymore, you have a check number. When you write a check, you can get a copy. It used to be a sheet right under the check where you got a carbon copy. I don't know if they do carbon copies anymore. However, with a check, and I don't write too many checks unless I'm paying tuition, and if I'm paying a $1,500 check, again, I'm going right to the post office to pay that check. I'm gonna make sure that everything is sealed in that check. Because, you know, what I saw in some of these videos is individuals can get in the mailbox, get the check, and they can actually, after the check was already written, individuals could go ahead and just put any number in that check. They can forge your name or forge somebody's name into that check. Now, again, when you get a check and it says, well, you won this much, and they don't give you the exact amount and they give you an excess and they tell you to send the excess back, no, that's a scam. And the walkers, to sum everything off, they're using innocent elderly people as walkers. They're using homeless people as walkers. You see what they're doing? They're using the downtrodden, while the downtrodden gets very little bit of the money with this scam. And the people who are working the scam, they get a lot of money. But again, they're using people that don't know any better, desperate people that want to make an extra buck. Look, fake check scams are a crime. And if you've been scammed out there, what you need to do is have a copy of that check number, even if you have to call the police, even if it's for $50. Bottom line is you have been scammed, but don't react so quickly, because this is what the scammers are doing. They're trying to get you to make an impulsive decision without thinking. And a lot of people do that. And they do that thinking, well, I'm going to get something good out of it. And I'm repeat this every time I do a video on scams. If it sounds too good to be true, you know it's too good to be true. You're going to be disappointed, because let's just be honest. In this day and age, you have a lot of crony capitalists, a lot of people out here who are greedy, particularly your elite. I mean, it's enough that they take a lot of taxes from us, but when they take your hard-earned money and they turn it into a hustle for themselves, that's wrong. And what I do here, I give you the information on how to stop the scams. Even if some of these scammers, and I know they're watching my videos, they've tried to come at me. Doesn't work. I mean, I've gotten the phone calls. I've had a few debit cards. People who have gotten into them. Just stop and get another one. And a debit card is a check card, so something else you need to know. If you're not using your debit card, freeze it. That way you don't have to worry about anybody getting into your account. Basically, overall, when it comes to the checks, when it comes to your debit cards, these are issues that your bank can resolve. You just have to call them, fill out a claim for the fraud, they investigate it, and they give you that money back. I know with Navy Federal, happened to me. I got the money back, and they realized that transactions that are on my account, whether by check or debit card, were fraudulent. And that's another thing you need to do. Check your credit card. Check your credit card account out. Check your bank statement out. Look at all the transactions that have been made. And if they don't make any sense, definitely contact your bank. Because in the end, when it comes to scammers, scammers think they're smarter than you are. But in the end, way to catch a scammer is to have an ounce of prevention. Because an ounce of prevention is always worth a pound of cure. You want to find out more about the scams? Keep watching the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. My job is to investigate the scams and give you tips on how not to be a victim of a scam. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. And if you're looking for some engineering content, math, or we call it STEM content, check out my second channel, QCIS channel. It's also right here on YouTube. I usually upload videos every Thursday or even Friday. You can find that channel on YouTube as well. Now, after I pre-record videos for both channels, the QCIS channel and the 411 Talk Zone radio show channel, I upload those videos to my Twitter page. Now, for the QCIS channel, since it is an educational channel, Also upload videos from that channel, the QCIS channel, to my LinkedIn page. And in the end, be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. If it doesn't apply, let it fly. But if the shoe fits, wear it. If you don't like the shoe, change it. Once again, thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. You all have a wonderful, gracious evening. God bless you. I'm out.